Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm so excited to share with you guys all of my favorite fantasy romance reads of 2023. This year I read around 50 books and majority of them were actually fantasy romance. So a lot of the books that I read this year are also indie published, and I especially want to highlight those because I feel like they deserve all the love and all the attention, especially because some of them are just as good, if not better, than traditionally published books. So hopefully you find some reads that you can save to your TBR, and I can't wait to share all of these with you guys. There is no specific ranking for the books that I'm going to share. I love them overall, and it's just so hard to pinpoint and rank specific books that I love more than others. So hopefully you guys understand. And without further ado, let's jump into the video. The first fantasy romance book that I love and absolutely recommend is Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This book is about an exiled princess named Elwyn who is born with a connection to 5 dragons, and as a result of her connection, her parents view her as a threat. So growing up, she's kept away from the outside world and in chains. She eventually is able to escape, but she leaves behind her 5 dragons. She establishes her own kingdom in hope that she'll be able to claim her dragons, her kingdom once again. She's eventually able to pursue her vengeance and seek her dragons and her kingdom once more when she finds herself in a reluctant alliance with the commander of the enemy kingdom, and his name is Commander Caden. I'm smiling so big right now because he's probably one of my favorite fictional male characters of all time. Anyways, she teams up with the commander. Along the way, there's found family, there's romantic tension, slow burn romance, touch her and you die, who did this to you. So many of my favorite tropes wrapped up in one, and I cannot express how much I love this book. There's one scene that lives like forever rent-free in my mind whenever I think about this book, and it involves the 2 main characters in an establishment where a lot of their feelings for each other show, and leading up to it they're basically like enemies forced in an alliance. So a lot of their tension comes into play in a certain scene. If you're unable to get your hands on the indie published version, I would say wait until 2024 because I know the author is going to be adding more scenes, more spice. So I'm super excited for that. The next book is also another indie published book, and it's Blood and Steel by Helen Scheuerer. This book is about Althea, and she's a scholar in an academy who dreams of becoming a warrior legend. However, in this world, women are unable to wield blades or swords because there's a prophecy that says one day a woman wielding a sword will bring about the end of the world, basically. Despite this, Althea still holds on to her dream and she trains in secret. She eventually is able to partake in this test to determine the future's warriors, and along the way she forms friendships and enemies. She also finds herself with a warrior chaperone named Wilder, and basically where the romance is between her and Wilder, who is this grumpy, brooding warrior legend that everyone fears, but he has a soft spot for her. And that dynamic is one that I will always eat up. Althea is this badass, feisty woman seeking to make a name for herself. Wilder's the one that protects her, and even though he's reluctant to do so, you see how much he cares. If you love forced proximity, kind of like a mentor-mentee romantic relationship, slow burn romance, monsters, warriors, badass sword-wielding women, tests and trials, like that type of fantasy world, I highly recommend this one. It's part of an ongoing series, and book 2 is actually out right now, and the 3rd book I think is set to be released next year. The next one might be a bit familiar because I've been talking about it pretty recently, and it's the book of Azrael by Nicole. The book follows Diana, who is a morally gray, badass FMC who is also part demon, who finds herself working with her mortal enemy who is a god king named Samkyul. Together they are forced to find an ancient artifact called the Book of Azrael, as it could be key in stopping the end of the world. This book is quite intense and lots of heartbreaking moments, and it's actually one that I would say is up there for me with Throne of Glass and ACOTAR. There's lots of shadowing and things that kind of just like flew over my mind, and it comes into play in a later book, and I'm just like, wow, Amber Nicole did that. If you love gods, fallen gods, monsters, prophecies, female rage, a slow burn to spice romance, grumpy sunshine, I recommend this one so much. The romance between Diana and Samkyul absolutely had me feral, because you just see how they fall in love with each other despite their histories, despite the darkness in their lives. And I feel like the slow burn romance was so perfectly paced, because it's not till the second book that you see them sort of come to a culmination in their relationship. Also, just prepare tissues, because this book especially broke my heart. And book 1 was a 5-star read. Book 2 was like an infinite star read. I love this series so much. Next book is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Erriu, and this is yet again another beautiful and heart-racing indie fantasy romance book. This book follows Alara, who is a princess cursed by fate. Basically, there's a prophecy that says she'll fall in love with Star, who are these powerful beings living on Earth who are revered and basically worshipped by the humans, but she'll fall in love with the Star, and as a result both of them will die. This prophecy, she seeks refuge in an enemy kingdom, and she finds herself in an alliance with this enemy kingdom, and its prince trains her to be a weapon in order to protect herself from Stars and her fate. This is an enemies to lovers with beautiful and intricate world building. There's a lot of gods and monsters, and I think if you love the idea of sort of like demigods and elements of magic and astrology, this one is for you. It is a bit of a thick one, but I honestly flew through this one and the second book because the story is quite insane. My mind was blown, especially in the second book. There were so many elements that I did not see coming, especially with the storyline. Especially love that there's different perspectives in the books, because you find yourself falling in love with the main characters, and especially for me, the side characters. I feel like their stories were so well written that to me their stories were just as important, if not even more, than the main characters themselves. The second book does expand the world even more. There's like pirates and there's mermaids, more characters, the world is even bigger than you would think it would be, and I just absolutely love this series. So, next book that I love and recommend is The Hurricane Wars by Thea, Guanzon, and this is a series that I actually hold close to my heart because it's inspired by Filipino culture and folklore, and as a Filipina American, it's not every day or so often that you are able to find books that represent your culture or have characters that look like you, and being able to read and find a fantasy romance book inspired by your culture is so heartwarming. The Hurricane Wars follows Taliesin, who is an orphan who has only known war her entire life. The world that she lives in is under the rule of the Night Empire. But Taliesin has a secret, and the secret is that she possesses the light power, which is a power that can destroy the Night Empire. She later finds out that she has a special connection to one of the kingdoms. She eventually finds herself in a marriage of convenience with, guess who? The Night Empire's prince. Together, Taliesin and the Night Emperor's only son, Alaric, are forced to join forces because they discover that their dark magic and light magic could be able to stop a greater, darker force that is coming their way. If you love true enemies to lovers, marriage of convenience, slow burn, tension, touch her and you die, I cannot recommend this book highly enough. To further entice you to read this book, it's actually inspired by Reylo fanfiction, which I love Raylo with my entire heart, and the banter, the tension between Alaric and Taliesin is so good. Hurricane Wars is part of an ongoing series. I do know that you should read this book and fall in love with Alaric and Taliesin as much as me. The fantasy and the world building in here is quite intense and intricate, and I absolutely love how it weaves like Filipino culture, Filipino mythology into it. I want a book with a lot of elements that you love in fantasy romance, set in worlds you otherwise would not necessarily read in fantasy. I highly recommend The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. Next book I want to talk about is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. So a lot of you guys are probably familiar with the Crown of Neaxia series, but I actually read both of them and prefer Daughter of No Worlds even more. I think just in terms of the world building and the story, this one literally blew me away, and the story in this is quite insane. So Daughter of No Worlds follows Tisana, who is a young woman who has grown up in a life of slavery. Her kingdom and her people have been conquered by another kingdom, and their lives have never been easy. One fateful day, Tisana is able to kill her master and flee from the life that she has essentially known her entire life. But in order to stay safe, Tisana has to seek refuge amongst the Order, which is a powerful organization of magic wielders who are strong enough to help her destroy her masters. In order to stay within the Order, she has to become an apprentice to a powerful magic wielder named Max. Together, they work to master her magic and keep up with the demands of the Order. Book 1 is literally the precipice of the world building in the entire series, and I feel like it does such a good job of establishing the two main characters, Tisana and Max. If you love like a mentor and apprentice relationship, magic, politics, world building, and a dark mystery beneath all of it, I highly recommend this series. Still get chills when I think about this series because there's a point of view in here that I was like, why is this here? It kind of jumps from past to present, and it kind of confused me, but it starts to make sense as you make your way through the series. And I still get chills thinking about it because Carissa Broadbent is so smart, and she does such a great job of weaving together these perspectives and the past and the present, and does so in a way that you're just like, what just happened? The second to last book that I want to talk about is What the River Knows, and this is a YA historical romance book. As you can see from how much I've tapped this book, I absolutely love this one. What the River Knows follows Inez, who has spent most of her life being left behind by her parents. Her parents spent a lot of their time in Egypt, and one day Inez receives the tragic news that her parents had passed away in Egypt. Inez doesn't receive a lot of answers surrounding the reasonings behind her parents' passings, so she travels to Egypt herself in order to resolve the mystery that led to their deaths. In Egypt, Inez finds herself under the guardianship of her uncle and his assistant, Wit. There, Inez discovers that there is an even greater mystery surrounding her parents, and it's one that she can only hope to solve. This book had so many twists and turns that I did not see coming, and the ending literally made me scream and want to throw my book at the wall. If you love mystery, if you love magical realism, rivals to lovers, I think you should definitely check this one out. This is part of an ongoing series, and I think the next book is set to be released in 2024, so if you do want to wait until the next book is out because the endings will quite literally blow your mind, I suggest that. I absolutely devoured this one. The romance in this was so good. It is a YA, so there's no spice, but I found that the tension between Inez and Wit literally had me blushing and kicking my feet. And the last book I want to share with all of you is probably one that's not a surprise because I've shared my love for it so often. It's Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This book absolutely destroyed me. Divine Rivals is set in a world where there are fallen gods and war. In this book, we literally follow the main characters into the trenches of war. The story follows Iris, who is a journalist who seeks to find her brother who has gone missing in the war. Alongside her journey to find her brother, she sends letters to her brother in hopes that it will reach him. Unknown to her, her letters are making its way to someone she least expects. Defying Rivals is an enemies to lovers fantasy historical romance that absolutely blew me away. One I recommend to all readers. Romance between Iris and Kit literally broke my heart, and I need to have my hands on book 2, which I think is released next week. So until then, I'll be counting down the hours until I have the book in my hand. So those are all the fantasy romance books that I absolutely loved in 2023. Like I mentioned, I read so many amazing fantasy romance books this year. If you want to find out more about amazing reads that I read, be sure to check out my Bookstagram, where I share annotations, book recs, reviews, book mail unboxings, all that. Thanks again for watching. I hope you're able to find some books that you're able to save to your TBR, and let me know down below if you've read any of them or plan on reading them next year. Thanks guys, and happy reading!